Welcome to Machine Minds, where technology and humanity meet. I'm your host, Greg Tarusian, founder of Samson Rose, a recruiting and search business focused on the robotics and AI industries. The Machine Minds show is where we dive deep into the intricate world of robotics and artificial intelligence. As a staffing industry leader with a passion for the frontiers of technology, I'm pleased to be bringing you intimate conversations with the founders, investors, and trailblazers who are at the heart of the AI and robotics revolution. In each episode, we dig into their journeys, the applications of the products they're working on, and the breakthroughs that are shaping our future. Join us as we explore how these machine minds are transforming the way we live, work, and understand our world. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a tech enthusiast, or just curious about this amazing field, you'll learn something new with each episode. Let's delve into the extraordinary. Let's delve into Machine Minds. Hello and welcome to Machine Minds. I'm your host, Greg Tarusian, and on today's episode, we have Saurav Agarwal, Director of Engineering at Shield AI. He was also the founder, CEO, and CTO of Sierra AI. Thanks for joining me, Saurav.
Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Yeah,
pleasure to be here, Greg.
I'm glad we can make this happen. So let's jump into it. Initially, really, I wanted to start by discussing your journey because you've got this really interesting background, obviously successful founder, you do a bunch of advisory work, and now you're leading and a director of engineering within AI and autonomy over at Shield AI. Really interesting company, cutting edge technology. So wanted to hear a bit about you, hand it over to you, and if you can give us a brief background there so the listeners know who they're listening to right now.
Awesome. Yeah. So quick background on myself. Grew up in India. Always wanted to be an aerospace engineer, so got trained up as an aerospace engineer in my undergrad. Really fell in love with early AI or mechatronics. Like, the thing that I was obsessed with is like you can use software to control a machine. And that's what got me into this field of autonomous vehicles. So I ended up studying in the UK on how to make an autonomous drone, and even got the opportunity to work in India on India's first self-driving car project for the military. Did that, eventually landed up in the US in 2013 to get a PhD in robotics. And while I was doing my PhD, I was crazy enough to start my first company in the dorm. And who knew at that time, especially I didn't, that running a business and doing a PhD together can be a bit challenging, to say the least. So anyway, my first company had nothing to do with robotics. It was called Guide Buddy, and what I was building was something similar to Airbnb, but instead of booking somebody's house, you book another person in another city as your travel guide. I ran that for 2 years, built a team of 6 people. We eventually rolled it out to about 15 cities worldwide, had 400 guides on the platform. But I realized that to scale a business like that, to scale an internet, consumer business, you need a lot of money. And I had no experience with venture capital. I was focused on my PhD at the time. So I decided to shut it down. Until then, it was completely bootstrapped. But I took a lot of lessons. And the first and most important lesson I learned was that, you got to figure out your market and your customers before building the product, right? Because as technical founders, we tend to index more on the product. So anyway, finished my PhD. I did a bunch of research on autonomous vehicles, drones, aerial vehicles, ground vehicles, and eventually decided that, hey, I don't think I'm a good fit for working for a big company. I had seen how frustrated I felt when I went and worked at Qualcomm for a couple of months in their R&D labs. And so I started Sierra AI in 2017 and then built it up over the next 5-6 years into a 40-person company with customers like John Deere, PepsiCo. And what we did was we helped major manufacturing and warehousing companies make their industrial vehicles like forklifts smarter and safer. Did that, and then finally at the end of last year, I transitioned out from the CEO role, handed over the reins to my successor, took a sabbatical, and then finally, found Shield as the next place for me.
Amazing. And what prompted you to go from your own company and start being a startup founder into more of an established, obviously for the people that don't know Shield AI, they're one of the leaders in like autonomous flight, work a lot in defense. And what prompted you to join them? I mean, obviously huge opportunity, great role, very well-known, good company, but instead of doing it again yourself, I'm sure some of the listeners will be interested to hear that side of it.
Yeah. So for me, look, I had raised about 7 million in venture capital, sold 100 to 300K deals. I had gone through the journey of building a business from 0 to 1. What I had not seen was the 1 to 10. To take a business from initial revenues, initial product to an IPO. And to me, Shield presented with that opportunity in a domain that I am good at, in a domain that I love working in. So that's why I ended up at Shield. And they gave me a very interesting role. And recently they ended up promoting me into a bigger role to basically take over complete, control of their core autonomy engineering development. So it's just been a fantastic experience so far in the last 3 months.
Amazing. Amazing. And you're still very active in the startup scene with your advisory work and things like that. Obviously, I'm on your newsletter as well, which we can give people details about later on at the end, because you share some gems every single week for founders and people involved in like early stage
Yeah.
projects. So it's really valuable stuff.
Yeah, that's something that I decided. So I had my own, founder coach or exec coach when I was running Sierra, and I found it to be really beneficial. With my own coach, I work mostly on the go-to-market strategy, sales, marketing. But what I realized is that there's a lot of other things beyond sales and marketing, fundraising, product development, leadership, hiring that founders need to learn, especially first-time founders. So I've kind of made it my life's mission to teach and coach founders and help them not make the mistakes I made so that they can all be successful. And the goal is to impact 100,000 founders in the next 5 years.
Amazing. That's such a great goal. Good for you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that knowledge as well, because like I said, I receive those emails weekly and some great stuff in there.
Awesome. Yeah.
So let's switch gears here. Autonomous systems and AI advancements in general, you've obviously seen it, a couple of different industries, smaller scale, larger scale now as well. And you've been building and leading teams in those areas. Let's talk about those advancements in that you've seen and you've witnessed in your career, how it's kind of helped shape things, how the breakthroughs in AI and robotics are helping shape the development of autonomous systems in general and across industries.
So I think like when I started out, I got into the field in 2010. Things were still pretty early. You couldn't get enough compute. So the hardware, wasn't there. Deep learning hadn't become popular. So solving computer vision problems was hard. And then basically the research was still in its infancy. I mean, the DARPA challenge had happened, but that was all very non-scalable, non-commercializable technology. What I've seen change in the last 10, 12 years is that we now have the compute to build truly autonomous vehicles with compute running at the edge. We now have the science, the understanding of techniques like deep learning, which enable us to reason with training on data. That wasn't really easy to do, especially in the computer vision domain. And finally, I think like there's just been enough time for the engineering work to clear up all the technical debt and robustify the technology to make it commercially ready. Like if you look at self-driving cars, I was in a lecture in 2017, and Emilio Frazzoli from MIT, who was actually who actually built his own startup in the autonomous vehicle space, said that by 2020 we'll have autonomous cars rolled out. Obviously, that didn't happen, right? It's 2023, and right now it's looking like 2030. So I think like people were at the peak of their hype of excitement, the hype curve, right? We went through the trough of disillusionment, and now we're coming out at the other end where things are more quiet, but actually real work is getting done, and we'll start seeing these things on the roads in the air soon.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And when you actually take a step back, because I did some work in the autonomous space as well previously internally with startups, and you think, yeah, technology may be there, but when you come in, especially in the US, regulations, each state is very different. The amount of different variables on the road, open road, if it's not a controlled environment, like in a mine, in a construction site, a slow moving vehicle in maybe a university or a master plan community, sure, you can be, level 4 autonomous, but having that on the open road with every different variable under the sun, it's it's scary to think about, to put it out there without a driver behind it, but it's coming. Like you said, the real work's getting done. There's been a lot of consolidation in the space as well, and you'll see like the winners coming to the top, and hopefully we'll see these things on the road in the next sort of 10 years at least.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I took a ride in a cruise autonomous vehicle in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago, and I was visiting my brother, and it was boring, which is good because
Yeah.
nothing off happened. So I fully expect these things to be around us at least in major cities by 2030 for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, anyone that hasn't done that, try and get out to one of these cities where they're trialing them. CES in January in Vegas every year, all of the companies come out there and demonstrate their technologies. It's really cool. It's fun stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good transition to the next section. Let's talk about some of the real world impact and ethical considerations for autonomous systems and AI, because obviously AI, big buzz at the moment. People, the general public anyway, are a lot more concerned and aware of generative AI, but obviously AI has been around for ages right now with vision, with autonomy, stuff like that, things that have been tested. From your perspective, can you share some examples about like some of the work that you've contributed to that's solving real world problems, and what your thoughts are on how this is going to be impacting us?
I think like Greg, you know this as well as I do, that any technology is a double-edged sword, right? Used
Mhm.
right, it can really cut through a lot of problems and help us solve them. Used wrong, it can, hurt people. The positives that I've seen. So in my last company at Sierra, we built an AI-enabled driver assist system very similar to Tesla Autopilot, but for heavy industrial vehicles. And that helped our customers prevent injuries and accidents. So it potentially saved somebody from losing a limb or losing their life. We even had cases of customers who, prior to using Sierra, had had a death in the warehouse. And they brought our technology in and they recreated that scenario and proved that if they had that kind of device installed on the vehicle, then that accident wouldn't have happened. So that's the positive side. But then you see the negative side, like Uber, when they were testing their self-driving cars in 2018, they killed a cyclist because they didn't engineer it right. They had put a lot of shortcuts. So, and I think that was, yeah, somebody died, but I'd say that was still benign. If you merge the intelligence of a large language model that can reason, or at least actually just guessing based on what it's been trained on. But if it can communicate in a human way, it can confuse people into thinking it's real, misguide them, mislead them, and maybe because it can write code, it can issue instructions to robots in the real world to cause harm. Now, I don't think we are there yet. I think people are afraid more than they should be. Like, these things are not sentient. They're pretty dumb, actually. But is there a possibility to get there? Yes. And we have the time and the tools at our hands to make sure that we don't screw it up. So I am long on AI. I'm an optimist. I'm not a pessimist here.
Yeah, I think the more people that you speak to that are in the space that actually have experience, that are building the tools and writing the code and know the capabilities, there's a lot of, I want to say, reassurance, at least to the general public, that, sci-fi movies and the doomsday kind of perspective of it is very dramatized. And yeah, it's a lot further away than we can expect. Is AI advancing a lot quicker than, some people might have expected? Yeah, sure. I mean, in some respects, but there's still fail safes. There's still a lot of control. And like you said, they are dumb in a lot of ways as well. So,
oh yeah.
Yeah. Does it have the ability to get there? Sure. But are we aware of it and to put things in place that it doesn't? Of course.
Yeah, exactly. Like making a robot pick up a cup of coffee is so hard, right? That's why we don't have Rosie the robot in everybody's house yet. It's just too hard.
So in terms of industry collaboration, future prospects, I mean, I don't know how much you can talk about with Shield or just in general on your perspective and your opinion here. Can you talk a bit about the importance of collaboration in the field, robotics, AI, autonomy in general?
Absolutely. So I think one of the best examples in robotics collaboration that I've seen in the industry is ROS, right? The robot operating system. That's come
Hmm.
out as a result of collaboration between lots of open source developers and open source community, big corporations like Google funding it. So that's been a true collaborative effort in the robotic space. In the AI space, there's so many open source AI models that you can, download and use it, build, run them on your own machine. So collaborations are happening. And I think that if we can achieve this or continue this model of industry pumping a small amount of money into these open source collaborative efforts, we can spread the benefit of these core technologies to anybody and everybody faster. Like I think Ross single-handedly has enabled commercial and industrial robotics to proceed at an epic, exponential growth rate. And if Ross wasn't there, everybody would be developing their own versions of Ross, and that means everybody's
Right.
reinventing the wheel internally in their own silos, versus with the collaborative effort. So I think collaboration is huge. It's there. Can we make it better? Yes. Like a lot of companies are building foundational large language models. Do we really need to if we can collaborate on open source standards for LLMs? And that makes them, transparent so people can actually inspect them and see are they, designed for safety. And I'm sure this is happening and it will happen.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Ross is a huge step forward for the industry in so many ways. And I've been in talks or conferences with some of the founders and stuff. It's hard to fathom the impact that it's had until you speak to so many different people and how they've
Exactly.
utilized it and it being core to their product.
Yeah.
So in terms of collaboration between like startups, established companies, research institutes, do you think that's something that should be a little bit more formal or have like an arena that's specifically for it? Because unless, in my experience anyway, I've seen if a founder has come from, like yourself, you did a PhD, you obviously did a ton of research, you can definitely see the value of having like research engineers or research scientists on staff or collaborating with them. But if someone hasn't, sometimes that's a harder thing in a startup for them to see the value or how to work with that person. But then you get the larger, more established companies that just have full research teams, right?
Hmm.
There has to be a way of making that a little bit more fluid or formal. What's your thoughts on that?
I think people have tried, and I have yet to see a good model.
Mm,
And this is my understanding. Collaborating with academia in a lot of ways is hard, right?
right.
Because you have mixed incentives. Academia doesn't want to be controlled for good reason. They want independence in their research. And at the same time, they're not looking to productize or commercialize anything. They just want to build at the edge. They want to test something new, build some new technology, and expand the frontier of human knowledge. What industry is looking for is, technology or output that they can commercialize and make money out of to get a return on their R&D investment. So yes, when you look at really large corporations with huge profits, they can fund the long-term research that academics like to do. For startups, funding long-term academic research is hard because you have shorter time horizons and you need something that is commercializable, productizable. But I think one way to drive more startup to academia collaboration is to send students into internship programs in cutting edge startups, deep tech startups. And that lets them apply their, knowledge of the frontier to real world problems and then take that back to inform their own research. That's what I did when I went to Qualcomm and helped them build the world's first, commercial vision-based drone that could fly itself inside a building without GPS. That was the first practical
Right.
demonstration. And me and my PhD mentor were actually together at Qualcomm, and we did that. And it was a really fun project. And what I learned from that, I took back to my own PhD. But not every company is doing that.
Yeah, you really need to have the right perspective. It just reminded me of a talk that I was in with Howie Chose. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but from Carnegie Mellon. And this was at a conference, a robotics conference, and he just kept talking about like the different, basically like what you said, the different incentives that research institutes and academia have compared to commercial. And there's always, the TRL stages and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And then
Yeah.
the academia to industry bridge is always a hard thing to kind of get right,
Yeah.
because success for academia does not look, publishing a paper and being cited and having all of that, or, getting some patents out there is very different to actually getting customers and creating revenue. So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, unless you have a founder or leader who understands how to implement all of those into a commercial function, it's kind of going to fall down and unfortunately not be successful, which is a shame,
Yeah.
because there's so much value there.
Yep. I mean, where you see this succeeding is pharma, biotech, where you can invent a molecule in a lab and then a pharma company can commercialize it and turn it into a real life-saving drug. It's harder in engineering domains. I've also seen that most universities have crappy tech transfer models. They're unreasonable. I experienced that with Texas A&M. They're shooting themselves in their own foot. They want an arm and a leg to commercialize, to give their technology. So if I am a student and I develop something during my PhD and I want to spin it out as a company, just dealing with the red tape and bureaucracy of these big large universities and what they're asking for it's unrealistic. So I decided to say to hell with it. I'll just go build something on my own from scratch, and it was faster and cheaper for me to do that versus
Right.
licensing technology from the university. So the ideal model is for universities to say, look, here's the technology. It's a huge risk that you are taking as an entrepreneur to build this into a real business. So we'll give it to you for a small equity stake, and we will fund the cost of getting the patent, right? So shared risk.
Yeah.
And so they spend maybe 10, 20K. That's it. They have billions in, in their banks. And in return for the upside, we get 1 or 2% of the company. And that could be worth a few $1,000,000 or zero. But
Right.
that's the risk that the universities have to learn to take.
Yeah, it's true. Very true. So what excites you most about the potential future advancements in this field, right? I guess with the lens of Shield AI at the moment or just in general.
So for me, in general, what I'm most excited about is A, the rollout of autonomy into the real world and real applications where it impacts our daily lives. So autonomous taxis, drone delivery programs, things like that.
Mhm.
B, LLMs, right? Bringing natural language conversation with machines into the real world. That's been huge. And the third thing is putting these two together. If I can talk to a robot and the robot can understand what I really mean and then carry out a physical action in the real world, do something for me, and then come back and tell me, hey, I'm done. What's next? That's huge, right? So there's companies like
Yeah.
Figure and Tesla that are building humanoid robots. If I could talk to one and say, hey, go pick up that piece of trash, throw it in the dustbin, and come back, right? I can't do that today. I have to type these commands and then maybe design something in a system versus just speaking it naturally.
It's very exciting stuff. I think that's where people, the general public, are going to get most excited when they've got a humanoid helper robot in their house. Because
Yeah,
unless you're in the industry, you're not seeing this stuff.
yeah.
All right. Well, before we round out, let's switch gears to your advice for aspiring innovators, founders. Apart from signing on to your newsletter, what else can you say for people in that position?
So yeah, I mean, you can sign up to my newsletter. It's free. But the advice that I give to any founder who works with me is when you go out to build a business, first go understand your market, your customer, then understand your go to market, which is your distribution. Like, how do you reach those customers? What is the message? Who is your customer? Who's your ICP? And then once you have these things figured out, then go build the product. And this is what almost every second time founder does. And this is exactly the opposite of what a first time founder does. A first time founder has an idea, they go out and build something, then they can't find a market need or they can't find the right customer, and they keep throwing things at the wall and see what sticks. And that's rough, and that's why most startups fail, because lack of real need in the market. But I think like this is what my coach taught me, like market, go to market, product. That's the right order to do things. And if you can do that, it will take a little bit longer in the beginning. It will feel slower, but net it's exponentially faster than building the product first.
Yeah, yeah. You see that with a lot of stealth mode companies that, again, first time founders, maybe just purely technical, have an amazing idea, technically at least, but not commercially, spend all this time, money, refining something that they think is amazing. And when you come to market, there's no one that wants to use it. Someone's beating you
Yeah.
to market. Maybe you're too expensive, so that's really good advice. Well, look, I really wanted to thank you for taking the time to being on the show, for being a guest here. I know that you're jumping on a plane after this. So Thanks again. Where can people find out more about you or connect with you or even sign up to your newsletter?
So the best place to start is my blog, my website. That's SAWRUV.com, saurav.com. And over there you'll get links to all my free guides I've written for founders. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can even book a free call with me to come to me and discuss your startup problems, where I can help you, advise you, overcome them.
That's great stuff. Well, thank you for your time. This has been really valuable information, great insights. I know you're a busy man, so I really appreciate it even more. And I look forward to seeing all the great stuff that you do with Shield AI, and I'll keep in touch with you for the future.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. Same for you. Wish you the best with this podcast and with your own business.
Thanks, Saurav.
Thank you.